Okay, let's learn a very basic lesson on texturing. It's very easy to get textures down in the Radiant editor. First, let's go ahead and show you how you can select the faces of a brush. Now, remember, if I hold shift and click these to show you these two brushes selected, as you remember, I called these brushes earlier. So anytime I say that, that is what we're referring to. It's something that you've created in the editor. Um, so there's two ways that you can texture brushes. You can select them with shift left click, and then you can choose a texture, and it will apply a texture to all four sides of the brush. Or the other way to texture is to use control, shift, and left click. And this will only select the face. On the other side of the wall, you'll see that it is not highlighted in red. Now, there are going to be many times where you will select the entire brush and texture all four sides at once. But I would say that you should try and select and texture only the faces as many or as much as you can. Again, because we want to utilize the caulk texture as much as possible. Wherever a player cannot see, you want that to remain caulk so that way the engine does not render it and it saves memory. So for this tutorial right here, I want us to use the control shift left click method. So let's texture these walls. While we have this wall selected, we can still enter the camera and move around. And then I'm going to control shift left click that wall, left click that wall, move the camera, control shift left click that wall. Now we're going to go up here to textures. Oh, I apologize. We're going to hit T to bring up the textures. Open this up. And let's find a good texture to use. Why don't we try? Yeah, why don't we go over to here to military wall and then choose concrete CO6. If you click once, you'll notice it applies the texture and it's still selected. So press escape and then you'll see the texture. Let's give the floor texture control shift left click T to open up the textures. Let's choose this concrete here, CO7 BCMP. Close the window, press escape, and then look up at the ceiling with the camera, control shift left click T to open up the textures. And let's choose this concrete right here, CO2. Hit escape. It's that easy. You go all the way out of your room. As you can see, the outside is all caulk. Fly inside, and just the walls or the interior faces of the brush are textured. Make sure to save our map here. So we've already textured the room. If we wanted to test this, we would need a spawn. Now, we will go in depth in a future video on what types of spawns you need in your map, depending on if you're developing for single player or multiplayer. Um, but for right now, our testing purposes, we are actually going to be using the single player side of Wolfenstein to test our map in the beginning stages. And then as we get closer to finishing the map, we will use the multiplayer client to test out various things. So it is important, at least for now, if you're following the tutorial, that you have the single player for Wolfenstein. So let me show you how to get a spawn in here. Come over to the grid and right click. What you're going to see here, all of these things are super important. You can spend some time and just like read them or find a word here and then maybe Google it and figure out what they all do. But we will be using some of these very soon during this tutorial. So the first thing we want to go to is going to be info and then player start. And as soon as you click that, it's going to spawn in a red square with an arrow. That arrow that you see here is basically where the player is going to be looking when they spawn in. Now, it's currently suspended in the air, and I want you guys to use the grid and bring the player spawn down. And my recommendation is this is a preference, but you should probably leave a unit of space here, like a gap off the ground, just in case. You don't. I've seen players getting stuck with poorly selected spawns. You can put it right on the floor. That's no problem. Personally, I'm just going to keep it one unit above the floor for now. Make sure you press escape and save the map. So great, we have a textured room. Actually, let me move this over here to the middle. There we go. We have a textured room. We have a spawn. There is one thing missing, though. If we were to try and compile this and then run it and play it, if we compile it with light, which you're going to need to do, you can compile your map without light, but you wouldn't want to do that. But when you compile it with light, since we don't have any lights in the room, it'll be pitch black. So let's add a basic light. And we'll go into more depth about this later. There are multiple types of lights. There are textures that actually give off light. And then there are point lights that are used in the engine. We're going to add a point light for now. So in your grid, I want you to right click and just choose light. And this window is going to pop up asking, how bright do you want this light? 300 is the default. Let's put half that. So 150, hit OK. What's cool about the editor is that it'll show you its orbs of light and how far out the light will travel. So the inner circle is its brightest, the outer circle is like its fall off. And you can take this light in the grid, of course, and you can move it around. I'm just going to put a dead center in the map for right now. And I'm going to bring this up so it's kind of even in all of the grids. There's one more thing I'm going to show you guys here about this light. So a very important button to press if you want to edit an object, more specifically entities. That's what this light is. It is an entity. You have to press the letter N as in Nancy. And that's going to bring up this entity property window. And this thing's great because up here, this first box, it's going to explain to you what the object is. What is its category of entity? And of course, it is a light. The box below it is going to show you different key commands. So all of these in the quotations are key commands. And then to the right of it is an explanation of what that key command, can do or what it is. So as you can see, if you type in, it says radius, if you were to put radius in as a key and then put it to a certain value, you're going to be overwriting the default 64 units. So this means that the default radius of this light, like how far out it'll reach, is 64 units. But if you wanted it to be larger, then you just type in, radius tab or go down to value, 124 or 128 or 264 or whatever you want. And the reason why I'm explaining this now is it'll make so much more sense when we go further, like making doors, like rotating doors or sliding doors, sounds, trigger events. I know it seems overwhelming or a little scary right now, but this is actually pretty darn easy. And it kind of helps you. It holds your hand here and shows you what to do. Underneath the description box is also a few boxes that you can check for different properties. And this is important because as it is right now, I want to show you what this light is going to look like. If so, pay attention to this box here, non-linear. We might use this here in just a moment, but I want you to see what this light looks like before we apply this here. Um, and in order to do that, though, we're going to have to compile this map. So let's get into that right now. Hit escape and let's save the map. So, compiling your map, this can be a little bit confusing. I'm going to do my best to explain it um, as quickly and as painless as possible. So, if you come up here to BSP, this is the menu that we are going to use every time we are ready to test our map. So, the way that Quake Engine works, and I'm just going to explain it in layman's terms. I'm not going to get too technical. Even I don't know the super technical or technicality about the entire process. But what you have to do is, in order for the Quake 3 engine to render and read a map, is it has to take the level and it has to convert the map file into what is known as a BSP file right here. Sorry. But not only that, you also have to, of course, run a second process so that you have to run this first line always. Every single time you've made a change to your map and you want to test it again, you always have to click this first one, which generates a BSP file. The second time is you're going to choose any one that's appropriate to you down this list. And if you take a look here, they've got these extra, tags next to them, light, fast, super, there's filters and bounce. All you really need to know to understand this is that those are going to be different passes that the engine is going to make on your map, um, depending on what type of map it is, and it'll make it higher quality. It'll render higher quality lights. It's going to render different textures and it's just going to make sure that all your entities are properly lit. um, it's just really a way for your map to be packaged up properly and look good. So what I want us to do here is before we compile, it's smart to press the letter O, and this brings up the console. And here's what we're going to do. So we're ready to test our map. We're going to go to BSP and you're going to click BSP Meta. Now, a Windows firewall might come up, so make sure you allow it. I don't know if you caught that, but you could see that the console was zooming down and generating lines of text. That's good. And you want to stare at this console because you want to see these two words. Well, really, you want to see these two words here. Sorry, connection closed, and there's no errors. That's great. If you see here, it'll even let you know that it wrote the BSP to a folder. Um, our map is called test, and then it created a BSP. So when you see connection closed, that's good. That means that the compile worked. You have your BSP file. Now we want our map to have lighting in it. So we need to go back to BSP. And what I would like you to do is choose this one. The first option that says test shows viz, light, fast, and filter. Click on that. The second compile will be much longer depending on how big your map is. It'll be longer than the first BSP uh, compile. But as soon as you see connection closed, we have done it. We just compiled a map. So you can close the console. And for right now, let's close the editor. There is something I want to explain here. Let's go into our Wolfenstein folder. Now, go into your main folder and go into your maps folder. So, a brief explanation. When you're in Radiant and you're working on your map, the default save location for maps that you're working on is in your main and then maps folder. So right here you can see test.map. There's our BSP that we just created. Anytime you compile your map, it is going to go here. It's saved here anyways, but also the compiled version, the BSP, will be in your main and maps folder. So now that we've compiled it and we have the BSP, we can actually go back to the main folder and we can launch single player. And I'll show you how we can open our map. So go ahead and launch single player. Now, here's the best and easiest way to open your map in Wolfenstein. You hit the console button, which is tilde, the button below escape. Type /devmap, dev map, space, the name of your map. So we named it test, TEST. If you named it something else, make sure that you type that name in there exactly how you spelled it. Hit enter. There we go. You can now move around in your map. Oh, yes, one other thing. If you're wondering why you cannot hear any sound, it's because there's a weird glitch with the single player client when you load up your map. So if you ever want to hear the sounds, you need to open up your console, type /vid _restart, sorry. Then hit enter. Now you can hear it. And, we don't have any weapons in our hand because remember, it's the single player module. So technically, you could just use the cheats and give yourself a weapon. If you wanted to test things out, you could do /give space all. And then if you, hold on, I think my model is missing. So I do CG draw gun 1. Yeah, there we go. CG draw 2D. Okay, so if you're wondering what commands I just used, sometimes when I'm testing out maps, I like to remove the HUD and I like to remove the weapon if I'm trying to, fly around the map and see how it looks. And those commands are right there on the screen. /CG _draw gun space 1. 1 enables it, 0 disables it. And then the HUD would be /CG _draw 2D space 1 or 0. And of course, I think I already said the cheat to give yourself all the weapons is /give space all. Also, I need to change my FPS. So to change your FPS, you can do /com, COM _max FPS space 125. And then if you want to see what the FPS is, /CG _draw FPS space 1. And then hit the console key and you'll see the frames up in the top of the screen. Yeah. Okay, so what I wanted you to see is you'll notice that this light is very weak almost. It's almost like a point light and it's just showing up in a circle, a small circle up in the top on the ceiling and on the ground. And we were kind of hoping for like a light that would fill the room a little bit. So that's because the light is not, it's linear. It's not it's non-linear. So let's go ahead and go back to our editor. We're done testing the map. And the quickest way I like to exit is the console/quit. And let's reopen Radiant. Let's open our map. Okay. Fly around. Shift, click on your light. Press N as in Nancy to open up the property window. Okay, to change the value of anything here, let's say we wanted the light to be slightly brighter. Left click once on this property, light of 150, then come down to the value, change it, 175, hit enter. You'll see that that just moved out more. And then let's also check this box, non-linear. Exit that, press escape, save your map, press O to open the console, and let's recompile. So first we need to do a BSP. I'm going to sound like a broken record, but you always have to do that first option. And then let's do an option with light. So this first test option says light, fast, and filter. Connection closed. We're done. So exit. Save one more time. I'm going to minimize this. Single player. /dev map space test. Okay. Look at that difference. The room is fairly lit up. You know, of course it has shadow to it, but this is just to show you the difference between linear lights, non-linear, and this is just one light. Something for you to keep in mind is you don't want a million lights in your map. In fact, I think there is a limit. I don't know what the number is. It's pretty large, but also when you start getting towards the end of your map, especially if it's a medium-sized map, you're going to see that compiling your map is going to take longer and longer and longer. If you have a great PC, this is not really a worry. In fact, it'll be still fairly quick, but the more lights you are having in a map, you will notice, your compile times are going to slowly stop being, you know, 20 seconds. They will start, approaching like this finished map is going to take 5 minutes to compile. But just keep that in mind. I think this looks pretty cool. And I think we're done for this lesson here. We just covered some basics, and then as we move along on this little tutorial, we're going to go into more advanced stuff. So the next video we're going to create a second room that is going to be adjacent to this room, and we're going to create a doorway, not a door just yet, but we will create a doorway that leads into that room, and I will show you how we can cut brushes to open up doors and windows and stuff like that. So I will see you guys in the next video.